Greetings and salutations. It is part 6 of our wedding photography workshop, live from the studio. Taylor Jackson.
Shooting 67 weddings last year.
Taylor Jackson, welcome.
So Taylor, you are well known in this community. You're an amazing photographer.
All right, next video is wedding photography poses. If you've just joined us here, basically what's going to happen is I'm going to go through all these 7 videos on YouTube, and then I'm going to go through all these 7 videos on Patreon. Tim's telling me to move over a little bit back to my mark that I keep avoiding. It's going to be all this is going to be out in March. So if you're watching this in March, you are able to instantly get access to all these videos that are behind me, which are kind of hopefully things that no one else in your local area is doing. And that's kind of the reason they're locked down, because if I put them up here, 5 or 6 people are going to start doing those activities and marketing strategies within your local area. But if it is behind a Patreon wall, I feel like maybe 1 or 2 people will do it. And I think Patreon in general is like, you just pull bits and pieces, like small things, to combine into your business, things that work for you, things that you think will resonate with your life happiness overall. And I think that it's a pretty overvalued transaction, I guess, as far as the monthly payment for hopefully creating thousands and thousands of dollars over your career, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars, like some Patreons have already attested to. So my uncertainty here for wedding photography poses really kind of comes back to the fact that I'm pretty quiet and shy, and I'm not a crazy like person out there telling people to do poses. And quite honestly, when it comes down to it, I don't really ever know exactly what an image will look like before I pose it. So I have kind of this uncertainty that the final image will look like, what it'll look like. And then also that kind of haunts me to not want to direct as much as I should. And what I discovered was that finding, I guess, my style, a few things that kind of really helped me and helped get me to a place that I was able to easily pose was one, I used to bring like either a backpack with me, or I used to have like a shoot sack with a bunch of lenses in it, and I would change lenses a lot, and I would do all kinds of different things, and I'd shoot that with the 24 and then 35 and then 85. And I realized that if I just shoot everything on an 85, I can actually be present a lot better. And with being present with a couple or with whoever you're taking photos of, you tend to just get better actual reactions out of them, that when you're out there taking photos, that they can just be themselves a little bit faster. I feel like all of my posing comes down to trying to get people to just be themselves. And while that might sound easy, it's actually incredibly difficult to get people to just like be normal and to forget that they're doing a photo shoot, because they're awkward and uncomfortable as well. So gear kind of comes down to the vibe that I create, which is just like, we're just gonna go for a walk and we're gonna take photos along the way. Whatever's gonna pop out, whatever's working on that day, we're gonna do. Because of this, I don't necessarily attract a lot of people with like huge ballroom gowns and whatnot. I tend to attract more people that show up either in like a simple dress or like jeans and a t-shirt or jeans and a sweater or something like that, which is totally fine by me. And we go out and we just go for a walk and we take lots of photos. I think it's important, and I think that just kind of comes down to what you're showing, that if you're showing in general just like this style of work and that this is how you operate, and if you have a promotional video, if like you show some behind the scenes stuff of people just kind of being normal like this, and that this is what you do, you go for a walk and you take some photos, I think in that case people just will either really connect to that and they'll understand, they'll be like, okay, it's no big deal, we'll just go and take some photos, versus the people that might want more of a studio session, that really do want that perfect off-camera lighting in every situation, and you're going to need an assistant. And that again doesn't go back to my life happiness, so I just don't do that. I don't show that, and I typically don't really book that a whole lot. My sessions are fast. You've probably seen a lot of them on YouTube, and I would say for couples, if I'm doing an engagement session, I can have everything I need probably in 20 minutes. If I'm going beyond 20 minutes, it's usually that we're either just walking places, or I'm just kind of like at the beginning, we'll take a little bit of a walk if I notice that they're uncomfortable, that rather than just like going straight to the first photo location, we'll take an indirect route to get there, to hopefully calm them down a little bit. But speed, I just try to get people to not think too much about what they're doing, and just to like, that we're going out, take a walk, and like, can you guys hold hands, walk this way? Can you hold hands, walk that way? Get really close together. And I just keep things fast, and I keep people moving too, which I think is another key thing. The more movement that goes into a session, the more people are just going to be normal, I guess. And again, trying to get them back to normal. If you're holding hands with your partner and just walking around, like that's a very easy thing to do, that you don't overthink. Whereas if like you're cheek, or like your forehead to forehead, and you're really close and kind of cuddly, and it's like you have some time to overthink that. So if I put them in a pose like that I know is a little bit weird, I do that really fast. So I will like hold hands and walk. Everybody's normal. Everybody's great. And then as soon as they get to like a specific point or a specific lighting point, I'll have them do the thing that's like maybe a little bit not that they wouldn't just do on an everyday normal scenario. And I'll do that really fast and I'll get all the shots that I need and I'll be ready for it. And I'll be taking images as they get into that pose and as they get out of that pose. And usually those are the images that I end up liking the most are the transitionary images. And they're just a little bit different. They're not, I wouldn't say like broken, but they're definitely not like 100% pose. That there might be things that are marginally out of place. And I feel like that adds realism and realistic life to the actual image. Another thing that I realized really early on was to not over direct. That if I was over directing and I was getting like absolutely everybody like, can you move this and like pop your hip this way and do this, that people would just rely on me to do that way more often. So my strategy was simply that at the beginning, I'll go over everyone and or go over the kind of the scope of what we're going to do. It's like, I just want you guys to be happy. Just be yourselves. Don't do anything that like weird because you think it would make a good photo. Like we'll just go for a walk, hold hands, have some fun. Usually within the bounds of that, people know how to kind of operate. And if I start over directing, then they start relying on me to do that all of the time. And it takes a lot longer for them to get to be normal. And in a lot of cases they won't. So I tend to not over direct. Goal is to be yourself, but you can't just tell people to be themselves because then they forget everything about how to be themselves. My flow and usual go-to poses, we're going to go through a few images now of things that I typically do. And again, it all comes back to walking, movement, pausing, and just kind of making everything seem organic and natural. So my go-to, hold hands, walk towards me. And it's a very easy thing. People are very normal and natural. I usually suggest that they get closer together, and sometimes they do something like this where they actually pull in. If they don't, I can tell them to do that, like give his arm a hug, something like that. And then at some point I'll tell them like, now walk away and walk that way. And again, like a lot of this is based on composition and colors and all kinds of things that don't necessarily go into posing, but the way that the images kind of come out are a little bit more like we're just kind of going for an adventure, which I kind of like. So at this point when they're walking away, I'll just ask them to pull each other in for a kiss, and I'll kind of do that from behind kiss shot that I like. If they're walking into the sun, it kind of just like everything just comes together nicely there. And then you can also do some fun things where you just kind of like, as you're like walking by, you can have them face opposite directions and hold hands. This kind of all depends on what the feeling is you get from the couple. These guys are obviously like, they came to get some really elegant photos. So I felt that this was a little more of an elegant style pose. It's not something I would traditionally do with everybody. But whenever you find yourself in a great symmetrical situation, easiest thing to do is just hold hands, just stand side by side. Usually one smiling facing the camera, talking to each other, pull each other in, and then face each other. So this is as they kind of like come in nice and close, and you can ask, basically you can get kind of 3 poses out of this, that they can look at each other, she can look at you, he can look at you, and kind of flip out that way. The other thing that I guess to talk about is that usually my images are nice and happy and kind of bright and airy, but you can also get a lot more romantic and dramatic based on the couple and also based on the situation. So we're out here in the mountains. This video is up on YouTube as well if you want to watch the behind the scenes of it. And really this was just kind of almost like a Gabe McClintock inspired thing where I just wanted like nice, somber, relaxed, like don't smile, don't look at the camera, just be really nice and close. And one thing when you want to create an image like this is to really focus on hand placement as well as movement of hands. So when somebody places a hand on somebody, don't just let them just like leave that hand there, like have them move their hand up and down and like on the back of the neck and things like that. So you can create something that's really nice and romantic simply by hand placement. So don't forget that. I feel like that's one of the things, the key things that's kind of left out of most photos, is that simply like you could just make this a way better photo just by the way you kind of close it off with a hand. I never really make the guy hug the girl from behind. That I feel like that's like always, it's just a prom pose and I don't love it. What does work though usually is if she's hugging him from behind, that works out really well. Or just a simple arm hug like this, like 2 different variations of it kind of back to back. Just like this, like you can just go like this and just like bury your head, or you can do something like this and just kind of like face into each other a little bit more. Those are pretty simple, easy poses to get through with the couple. You can also do stuff like this where you're holding hands but also hugging their arm to like get really nice and close. And again, composition doing a lot of this work, and you don't really have to do a whole lot with the couple to actually really make this a fantastic image. Last thing, if they are facing each other, that people will usually kind of naturally go for like the just hold each other around your waist. And I feel like kind of linking arms up like this is a little bit of a better solution. Now there are some variables. If somebody has a nice big dress and they can play with it, I feel like that's a very natural, easy thing to do. That really creates a lot of drama, like this photo here. I'm very happy with it. Basically, it was just like, can you just play around with your dress? And Mark was just kind of staring at me. And like, it works. So I'm pretty happy with it. I guess to speak to another thing is that a lot of the time when I'm taking the images, I'm really not necessarily like spray and praying, but I'm going through a lot of different scenarios, and on the back of my screen, I don't really know what is going to be the best photo from the set. That anytime that I'm like, oh, this is the best one, it ends up being maybe a top 10, but it's never the best photo, the one you get back to your computer and you've actually removed yourself from the scene. So go through a lot of different poses. Even when you think you got it, come up with like one or two other things. Last thing, just a simple little dance under a tree. I think that light inspires my poses a lot as well, that if there's some good light happening, that we're just going to go do something over there. And if it's a scene like this, like it just seems like a little first dance scene. So simple, like small directions, like have like your fake first dance, or practice your first dance is another good one, because a lot of couples are kind of nervous about that. So if you're out before the actual party takes off at their wedding, it's very easy to be like, hey, can you just like run me through your first dance? And they'll just sing in their heads or whatever. And it usually comes out to be a great photo. All right. That is all for posing this section. We're going to go to Tim for, what do you want to do, 2 questions?
Yeah, we do a few.
All right, we're going to get 2 questions, and then we got 120 more slides to get through.
Oh, my God.
But most of those are going to be on Patreon.
The simple one here, laptop or desktop for editing? What do you prefer?
Laptop or desktop for editing? I would say I like a desktop. I like to have a specific environment that I have to kind of work in. So I'm going to say desktop computer. That one, it'll save you money, and 2, it's just like, it's nice to have a home base. If you have the ability to have kind of home base and to have it set up and to have an office, I feel like it's nice just on like a human level to have a place where you go to work rather than a laptop that you can kind of work everywhere. But that said, I do a lot of work on my laptop as well. That if I had to pick one, I would pick a laptop, but if I could have both, I would get like a cheap iMac, like one of the ones from a bunch of years ago, and then also get a nice laptop that can process video if you want to do video.
That was from Tommy Toulis.
Tommy, thank you.
Final question here, we'll get to this section, has to do with referrals. When you say work can come mostly from online presence or from guests at events or by contacting planners and venues, etc., would you say that? So Clyde wants to know, where do most of your referrals come from?
Yeah. So where do most of my referrals come from? I actually have a full write-up that I actually went through. I think it was my 2017 details on Patreon, where I went through everything individually. But at the time, I would say that most of my referrals were coming from probably, I'll have to check this actually. I'm going to say venues were kind of number 1. And when I did all the math and I realized that, I focused a lot more on actually doubling down. Thanks, Tim. Double downing on doing that better. So I think overall that was kind of my wake-up call. So it's important maybe to see in your specific business where all of your referrals are coming from right now, and to figure out how to make that work even more effectively. But I would say venue referrals are kind of number 1. I think at the time that I did this, social media and specifically Instagram wasn't huge, but it was huge for Lindsay, my wife. She was booking a significant number of weddings from Instagram already back in like 2017.